When I wrote the script for the first video, I overlooked some very, very important facts regarding my father's biography and my siblings. So I'm going to follow up with a second segment. A most important fact about my father's family: when my father went to London and then on to the United States, Aunt Sarah was with him, and my grandmother Hannah became pregnant at that time. I'm sure it was unexpected. Her husband, my grandfather, went to London to visit his family for a very short visit, and while there, sadly, he became ill and he died. That left my grandmother with her remaining children, one yet unborn, to fend for herself. Life was most difficult because they were impoverished, food was scarce, and the First World War occurred. Uncle Sam was born into and grew up in that atmosphere. No father, life was so bitter. He came to the United States to join his father, my father, and Aunt Sarah, who probably sent money for passage, as most people did at that time. He never knew either his sister or brother, as he was born after they left Poland. The two brothers were so different from one another because of their childhood, but they never ran out of conversation. When we would share a holiday dinner, they would go out for a long walk and talk for hours, and I'm sure it was about their backgrounds, their family, their future, their businesses, etc. My parents were married 1 year when my brother Leonard was born, and they were delighted. He was a darling baby, and pictures were sent to the family in Poland whenever possible. I'm going to try to display one now. Well, that worked, didn't it? Then I came along 2.5 years later, and when I was 3, we moved to Scranton. Norma was born there the following year during the deepest financial depression, and my father and his sister and their family all had to pull together to help each other stay afloat. When living became easier a few years later, my parents called Norma their lucky penny, as her arrival seemed to be the turning point. She was a beautiful child. My brother was a most agreeable one, and I think I was the strongest willed. All three of us were devoted to our parents, and we were married to spouses who were very thoughtful and inclusive. The child who lives closest to his parents is the one who often has to give the most, and I am grateful to Leonard and to his wife Bea for being there for my parents always. In later years, when my parents could afford to do this, they went to the Catskills for 2 weeks during the summer, and I went from Wilkes-Barre every day and worked in their stores so that it remained open. It took a long time for me to convince them that they could take a vacation and their business wouldn't die. It was very rewarding for them. And since my father walked miles every time he had a chance, it was a perfect getaway. Then, after retirement, they spent a few winters in Florida, something this couple could never believe would happen. When we bought our house on Dawes Avenue, it was a very exciting event for our family. My parents always lived in an apartment, and everything to do with property ownership seemed daunting to them. The day after they first saw the house, my father called and told me he couldn't sleep all night. How would my father shovel the snow on that long, long sidewalk? He always worried about our working too hard, whether in the garden or business, and especially when I sewed as much as I did. He once told Dad that he should close the sewing machine when I spent too much time with it, as I had only one pair of eyes and they had to last my entire life. They came to Kingston every Sunday, as Scranton was only 30 minutes away, and we had wonderful visits. I love remembering my parents, and I feel in my heart that their days were well spent and they were happy.